Philippians chapter 1, beginning with verse 3. Again, listen for the word of the Lord. I thank my God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you, because of your sharing in the gospel from the first day until now. I am confident of this, that one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion on the day of Jesus Christ. It is right for me to think this way about all of you, because you hold me in your heart. For all of you share in God's grace with me, both in my imprisonment and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness, how I long for all of you with the compassion of Jesus Christ. And this is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more with all knowledge and full insight, to help you determine what is best, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless, having produced a harvest of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ for the glory and the praise of God. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. John the Baptist saying, "Prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight." And what is that but a call that if we're to be ready for the coming of Christ, we need to pay attention to our morals and to our ethics. In Philippians, when he says, "May your love overflow," an ethical concept, right? With knowledge and full insight, another ethical concept. To do what is best, another ethical concept. Pure and blameless, other ethical concepts. To produce a harvest of righteousness. We can see again and again and again the idea of righteousness and belief, faith and ethics go hand in hand. That knowledge and full insight are required to determine what is best for people who need to learn to live together in the world. David Brooks, in his insightful book, The Second Mountain, describes what has happened over the past half century, a little bit more. How we celebrated the values of freedom and autonomy and authenticity, and people became free to express their authentic selves. And this was a great liberating sort of thing. It was very positive. But then it's been taken to the extreme. And it started on the social left, and now it's migrated to the social right. And now everybody thinks they are right, and they do what's right in their own eyes, and they do whatever they want. And they resent those who want them to live differently. We live in a society where people are increasingly contentious. They selfishly protect their own benefits and ignore the effects of what they do on others. We can't have a righteous society if that is the case. It's not that individualism is wrong, but a radical individualism where people only look out for number one, only look out for their interests, that is self-destructive. And it's moved, of course, from individuals to corporations, and corporations also think only of themselves and their stockholders. They ignore their employees, and they don't even care for the country that has nurtured them. So how do we get started working for a different world? There are ethical principles. People name freedom and justice and autonomy a lot these days, and those are good things. But when they've gone to an extreme, as they have, then we need to have a correction, a course correction, as we journey forward into the future. So I'd like to lift up a moral concept that I think helps us with that correction, and that is the moral concept of the common good. The common good was something talked about by Plato where he was searching for the greatest possible happiness for the city as a whole, not just for individuals, but for the city as a whole, to form something of a moral ecology of the whole, for the family, for the community, for the city, for the country, and we would say for the world. St. Augustine, one of the early Christian leaders that has had an impact on all generations ever since. St. Augustine talked about the city of God. In other words, that we need a shared participation to make us a people who can live together, who can thrive together. St. Thomas Aquinas talked about the basic features of laws, but for him it was about human cooperation, a shared achievement where there were certain general conditions that were implemented equally for everyone's advantage. The common good. The Roman Catholic tradition defines the common good as the sum of those conditions of social life which allows social groups and their individual members a thorough and ready access for their own fulfillment. The common good matters in such a world. It's things like public parks that are not just for a few. There may be a few who have rolling country estates where they can have their own park. But what about the rest of the people? And so we have city parks and state parks and national parks so everyone can have a sense of the goodness of nature. It's shared for all. Public safety is something that is not just for a few, but should be for all. Clean water is something that is a good, not just for a few, but is needed for all to have. Clean air is something that all need to have. Public education is something that all need to have. These are the sort of things that the public good, the common good, it talks about. John Calvin, the guy who started the Presbyterian Church, had concepts of the common good. For him, the common good requires a system of voluntary gift giving. A shared common grace is given to us by God, and then it's up to us to commonly share this grace mutually with others. And the way that we do this is the way we practice politics and the way we practice economics and our economic structures, our social welfare system. You can see John Calvin putting these things in practice as he implemented the public goods of public schools and hospitals and Geneva. He made sure even they had an adequate water and sewer system because the common good was something that everyone needed to share so everyone would benefit. The common good does not just happen. It requires cooperation. Again, I go back to that image of a public park. It works because we have a system where people share a burden of taxes. We share the taxes so the grass gets mowed in the park and the beach has a lifeguard and the playground equipment is safe. The big system matters, as well as the small acts that the citizens do, like picking up after themselves in a picnic and maybe even picking up some of the garbage they see as they walk past. It's something we all sacrifice for, so we all benefit together. In the common good, the world is a better place because individuals constrain themselves or they sacrifice. They do it so that the efforts come together and everyone has a better life, a better world, a better existence. Now there's challenges to this idea of the common good. In the common good, different people have different ideas about what really matters. Some people don't care about public parks. They say, I never go to the park. Why would I want to support that? Other people say, I don't have children. Why do I want to support the public education system? Well, the thing about the common good is we don't have to agree on all of the goods that are out there. It's something of a compromise. We talk about these things together publicly. The things that one group cares about, the things that another group cares about, we dialogue, we discuss, we debate, and we decide. How can we do something where everyone feels like they've had something? Not everything, but they've had something that helps to make their lives better. Democracy's always been something of a discussion society, a horse trading sort of thing where I give this up, you give that up, and we all come together and life is better. There are other challenges for the common good. It's not an easy concept that's just obvious. There's always been free riders here and there. Some people complain that the poor don't do their part. Some complain that corporations don't do their fair share. I think we have to recognize we don't live in a perfect world. There is no perfect system. The common good requires the ideal that everyone do a reasonable amount, but while we might not reach that ideal, in the real world, if the majority do their part, then life will be better for most everyone. We need to have realistic expectations of how life works. Another problem that is lifted up when you start talking about the common good is some people say they're having an unequal share of the burdens, that some particular group bears costs that are much greater than those who are borne by others. Yes, sometimes that's how it works. But the Bible has a phrase there that I think is helpful. The Bible has that phrase, to whom much is given, much is required. To whom much is given, much is required. There are no easy answers. There are no simple solutions. But we have to ask ourselves, what kind of society do we want to become? That's the question that the common good needs to talk about in order for us to come to a vision of where we're headed and where we want to go. Now, who leads this kind of change that's needed to work more towards the common good? I have my doubts that the politicians are going to do that. It seems to me that it's going to be committed people like people in churches such as this, who structure their lives, who join together, who advocate and work for creative opportunities for change. God gives us wisdom. God gives us ideas and possibilities. But we have to talk about it with one another, and we have to band people together to help one another and to make the world a better place. You know, it mattered in the World War II generation that people banded together and sacrificed mutually. And when they did that, not just within a nation, but among nations, then the world was able to conquer fascism, and democracy was on the rise. I still have some of my parents' memorabilia from World War II. I have some of their ration books where they rationed sugar and butter and gas and coal and oil. They shared, as did most, with the sacrifice that was required to defeat fascism. In that whole experience, people were not perfect. There were some people who took advantage of the situation, but the majority were willing to work for the common good. For those of us who come out of the boomer generation, you like me remember lining up in our grade school to get vaccinated for polio. The line went all the way around the gym and on down the hall for the whole grade school. I was young enough, it made an impression on me. I remember that image. I didn't know what was going on at the time. Years later, I talked with one man, he was about my age, who had not been vaccinated and who ended up in an iron lung for years. There were hospital wards full of kids like him. But that stopped because people sacrificed together. People cared about the common good, not just for themselves, but for everybody. Today we see people who are unwilling to make the sacrifice for others. They're angry even about being asked to do something like that, whether it be on airplanes or in stores or in schools or on social media. We need to remember that the common good is something that we need to work for. It doesn't just happen. The common good is about a shared sense of community. We need to say the atmosphere that has taken away from the common good. I think a large part of the blame for that atmosphere goes to the politicians because they keep on stirring up fear in order to defeat their opponents. They care more about winning their election than about people's lives. And we need to tell these politicians to stop that kind of behavior because we need to expect the best from them. We as Christians have a duty to gain, as the Bible says, knowledge and full insight. To gain knowledge and full insight so that we are ready to work for the things that can work in the world. John the Baptist says, "Prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight." It's a call for ethics. It's a call for a world where all are going to experience the benefit, not just the ones on the mountaintop. And the ones in the valley have a sense of hope because the road is made straight, to prepare the way of the Lord. Philippians terms it a harvest of righteousness. A harvest of righteousness that happens when people become morally educated to work for the common good. When they come to understand that there needs to be a sense of shared sacrifices, and I make sacrifices for something that I may not benefit for, but you will, and you make sacrifices so I will benefit. The common good is about shared sacrifices, and that's what works to have this harvest of righteousness. I think we need to celebrate sometimes that so many times there really are a majority of people who are willing to make those sacrifices, who are willing to sacrifice part of their comfort for the good of others, for the good of other people, and for the good of their country, for the good of the world. I think that's something we need to celebrate, and that's something that should make us feel good. And when I hear about those stories, it gives me a sense that maybe I really could do more. I think that sense of shared sacrifice gives people a sense of energy and hope. Change will come. Change will come if we find that we can identify in all wisdom that the current moral climate is oppressive. And we want to create another climate, another moral climate that's based on another set of values. Part of that happens through us being clear and identifying those values and getting excited about it and talking about it, learning about it and discussing it with others, and then living towards it together with others. Living toward that new day, that new hope, because good things really can happen. I'd like to close with a story. I probably have told it to you before. It's just a story that always gives me energy. My friend Bob was the president of the Dollar General Corporation. You know, all those Dollar General stores across the country. And Bob was working on a vision for their corporation, and in their vision statement, they had the word service. And so the leadership of the corporation started playing with that idea of who do we serve? And they said, well, of course we serve the stockholders, and of course they do. And of course they serve the customers, and of course they do that. But they said they also serve their employees, and they also serve the communities where these stores are located. Well, by the time they got done talking about service, they identified one particular place in Nashville that was, it was a food desert. And it was a place where there were no stores, but there were a lot of very poor people, because poor people are who this corporation often is their clientele. So they decided to build a Dollar General store in the poorest section of Nashville. Once they did that, they decided that really wasn't enough. They needed to hire people from the neighborhood to work in the store. That would be another way of serving. And then when they wanted to do that, they discovered these folks didn't have all the skills they needed to work in the Dollar General store, so they built an education center alongside of the Dollar General to train people so they could work in the store, and they'd get other jobs in other places too. And it was a thriving concern. And to show how much the people in the neighborhood appreciated it, every building in that section of Nashville had graffiti all over it, but not one piece of paint on the Dollar General store. And then one day, the manager came to work, and there was a bullet hole in the window. And later on that day, he got an anonymous phone call. And the voice on the other end of the call said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you, I'm sorry about the bullet hole in your window. I was shooting at somebody, but I sure didn't mean to hit the Dollar General store." Oh, it's just amazing how a sense of the common good really can be implemented, and it can spread. And hopefully it'll even make us, over time, more peaceful to one another. But it's up to us to identify what are the values that we see that we want to work towards to make this a better world. As you look towards 2022, what are the values that will build toward a sense of the common good in the church, in your family, in the community, in our city, in the world? God has called us to a harvest of righteousness where more and more people can taste the goodness of life and be filled with that sense of joy and fulfillment. These things come as we work together, talk together, discover and decide to move and work towards the common good of all. Amen.
Thanks for watching our video. Make sure to subscribe to get the latest and greatest videos from the Old Stone Church. And if you feel blessed by our message, please go to theoldstonechurch.org and click to donate. God bless you today and forever. The Old Stone Church. We've been loving Christ and serving city since 1820.